Today is October 4th, 2017. My name is Caleb.
And I am Anthony.
And we are
The Rivals.
It has been a long time, my friend.
Indeed it has. I miss you.
I missed you. It's been lonely.
Yeah.
And I've been saying some things that people don't like. So hopefully with you being here.
Well, I get to defend my side now,
You
which
did.
is the original intent of this podcast.
Basically. All right. So today is Wednesday. Friday is what I'm calling
Judgment Day?
In jest. I was going to call it Judgment Day. In jest, I think a lot of people are freaking out, and I think I don't think it's going to be as bad as people think. I think the U.S. is going to qualify, probably in third, because I think even if you don't do well against Panama, you have the last match day, you have Trinidad and Tobago, which is the worst team in the region by a lot. And then Mexico plays Honduras, and Costa Rica plays Panama, which are your rivals. So the chances of either of those teams beating Mexico and Costa Rica, and Mexico losing or Honduras winning by enough goal differential to get you to overpass you, I think there are just too many factors that are against everyone else. And I think you guys are going to do well. But I understand that there is some stress.
I think it's fair to say that this is probably the easiest two games of the World Cup qualifying together as a pair. You know, we started off early with Costa Rica and Mexico. We started off with, at Mexico, then facing, these are the two as a pair, I think, that are the most easy to win. Now, with that being said, we sit in fourth place right now with 11 points with lots of injuries.
Right. But even if you lose to Panama, things would have to go terribly wrong against Trinidad and Tobago, and you have to also assume that Honduras is going to win both their games.
Well, see, and that's the thing. Honduras needs to win both their games. I think off the top of my head, because their goal differential is just terrible.
It's abysmal. And they would, assuming that you guys have the same results, they would have to win their game by 10 goals or something like that.
Now, what we need is our friends to the south to, how can I put this kindly, repay us
Right.
for Sanzuzi
Yes.
and not throw in the towel on these next two games.
Well, here's the good news for you. Our manager has called up the A team for both games. He had a chance to experiment. A lot of people were calling for, we're guaranteed a spot, and there's no chance of us not qualifying. A lot of people were calling in to experiment on with some youth, but what he has come out and said is, we don't have that many games for the World Cup to play as a unit. I want to take advantage of every single game we have together.
And competitive games, no less. These are the last two competitive games that you will get.
Well, we have, I think, a friendly against Belgium and another friendly, but in Europe, not at home, or in the U.S., and I think another one against Bosnia. So Bosnia and Belgium. Bosnia,
I guess my competitive definition is a little stronger. I'm saying these are games that all of these teams have something to play for.
Right.
Even though you have already qualified, the teams you're playing have not.
Correct.
And they're going to, come out swinging.
Right. And TNT are mathematically still alive. They're not going to qualify. The only people you have to worry about is whether either the U.S. or Panama, in my opinion, are going to get third. And Honduras is fighting for that to be kind of in the conversation. But I think it's going to be between the U.S. and Panama.
Honduras is on the same amount of points as us.
That's the goal differential.
The goal differential is big, but, they win two games.
They're not going to win two games. That's just what I'm saying. I think they play Costa Rica Friday, and then they play Mexico Tuesday. And they're not going to beat both of those teams.
I don't think they will.
And if they do, they're not going to win by 10 goals combined.
At the end of the day, though, here's the thing. The U.S. should not be in the playoff position where they have to go and play a team from Asia. The fourth team has to do the playoff.
Right.
You remember.
I do, very well. And I agree with you. We can go, and this would be a conversation to go back in time and kind of look at what led to this point. But what I really wanted to talk to you about is let's hypothetically give the worst case scenario, and the U.S. does not qualify for the World Cup.
Listen, I'm a USA fan. I'm always thinking worst case scenario.
Yeah. I want to discuss what do you think would be the short-term repercussions and the long-term repercussions for U.S. soccer as a whole if the U.S. does not qualify for the 2018 World Cup. I kind of want to. It's kind of a broad topic.
Well, you're not asking that too much of me, per se.
Yeah.
So first off, we'll look at this, just the immediate impact. The immediate impact is that for the first time in 20 years, we have a league that is domestic, that is growing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can say all you want is if it's competitive with other leagues around the world, if they bring in quality players, if they're a retirement league. I don't care about that. It is 100% absolutely true, and you cannot argue with me that the league is not growing substantially.
It is.
The World Cup 100% influences that. And if they were to miss the World Cup, I think it would be crucial and detrimental to the domestic league here, all domestic leagues. I'm talking about the MLS, NASL, the USL, for their growth. People tune in, casuals tune into the World Cup. If the USA is not there, you're going to miss out on a lot of casuals. You're going to miss out on that next generation of young kids, of casuals who are going to turn to watching soccer here in America.
And I actually disagree with that. I think short term, I don't think it affects the leagues at all. And I'll tell you why. There's still going to be... When does the MLS play? What are the months of the MLS?
Well, they're coming to the end of it right now. So the playoffs start October and finish through to the winter.
Yeah, and when does it start? Like May-ish?
Yeah.
Okay, so the league, something like that. Yeah. My point is, the MLS is going to be going on during the World Cup. Is that correct? Oh, are they going to cancel they're going to cancel the season next year because of the World Cup?
I mean, I would have to think. I mean, I think every league.
I don't think they do.
That's a good question.
I don't think they canceled. I don't think that would happen. They're not canceling. They didn't cancel.
The season begins in March, by the way.
Okay.
And ends on the 22nd of October.
So they didn't cancel the MLS during Gold Cup.
They did not, but the Gold Cup is not.
It's a regional of regional importance.
Yes, but it's not necessarily a FIFA sanctioned tournament because you can have teams like Martinique and things of that nature that are technically French but are not, and also you can bring in players midway through the tournament. What tournament can you bring in?
Well, that's
new players?
that's CONCACAF's issue. That's why the Gold Cup is a joke.
We've already had that conversation.
Yes, but it is FIFA sanctioned because the winner of the Gold Cup goes to confederations. So it is FIFA sanctioned. They didn't cancel the MLS for the Gold Cup. I don't think they'll cancel MLS next year. I haven't heard any rumors that they would, and I don't see why they would cancel a domestic league for the World Cup. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think that they're going to. So, even if the U.S. doesn't qualify, the league goes on. And the league goes on whether or not the U.S. qualifies.
The league goes on, but the league doesn't grow. It doesn't get that new fan that it would have had.
And this is where I'm going to disagree with you again. I think the young fan today has enough quote-unquote idols in the world game that they would tune in anyway. They would tune in to watch Ronaldo. They would tune in to watch Messi. They would tune in to watch Neymar or whatever his name is.
Yes, but when their nation is not there, it does not give them something to grab onto. When the U.S. is there and they talk about Michael Bradley, oh, and by the way, he plays for Toronto FC in the MLS, just won the Supporters' Shield. We have this great domestic league here. Oh, we're going to talk about Kellen Acosta, who plays for FC Dallas, 22 years old, up-and-comer for the U.S. team, and he's going to be there and he's going to have, hopefully, a good tournament. But if he's not there, they don't know about Kellen Acosta, who's 22 years old. That is one argument I have. The second is, could we imagine if Christian Pulisic just him, missed out on the World Cup. That it hurts his brand 100%. You can tell me it doesn't. How many players go to the World Cup and immediately get signed after, who get scouted after?
Okay, I'm going to disagree with you
We
again.
can keep disagreeing.
I don't think his brand is hurt at all. He already plays for one of the top teams in the world.
But if he goes in and if he plays against Argentina, he plays against Germany and does well, he scores, he assists, he comes out as the leading goal scorer, he comes out as an assist man, he just tears up Spain. Every eye. Listen, not everybody is turning into Dortmund games. Not every scout on the planet is turning into Dortmund games. Now, maybe a lot of them are because Dortmund's known for youth, but everybody's eyes are on the World Cup for 2 to 3 months during the summer every 4 years. If he can do it there with a subpar USA team, and it is subpar, I will admit to that. I mean, that would be just crazy. Think about just the branding of Christian Pulisic, marketing-wise, everything. He will become the poster boy of the World Cup for the U.S.
Right, okay,
So not necessarily just looking at him moving on to another team, but looking on, we have never had a superstar. Landon Donovan, great player. Amazing, amazing player. Tim Howard, I would argue, and I think others would, that at one point he was a top 5 goalkeeper in the world.
I agree.
Clint Dempsey, the enigma that is Clint Dempsey, was a great player for Fulham, for Tottenham, for these teams. We have never had a top 5, top 10 player in the world. Christian Pulisic is not there yet. But it's coming. If he stays healthy, if he stays in favor with any coach that he has, it's coming.
So, I think I agree that it won't help his brand, but I don't think it hurts his brand. I think if he doesn't show up to the World Cup, his brand stays where it is. It doesn't diminish. I think his brand remains because he's still playing on one of the top teams in one of the top leagues in the world. That's not going to change. He's not going to be like, they're not going to be like, well, the U.S. didn't make the World Cup. We're selling you off to like
No,
Russia.
not selling. That's not the argument I'm
No,
making.
but I'm saying,
if his brand's not growing, that's a detriment. That's not.
His brand hasn't grown every single summer. His brand grows during the
It's only
season.
been one summer. He's 19 years old. He's only
Right,
played once.
Right, that's true. That's true. What did he played in the Gold Cup, right?
No, he did not play in the Gold Cup.
He didn't play in the Gold Cup.
No, not with the Gold Cup.
Okay.
They kept him because once Thomas Tuchel was out, they needed. My thoughts is you don't call him in because you need him to win the position with Peter Bosz, and I mean he did, so he won his position.
Okay.
So no, he did not play in the Gold Cup.
Okay. I still think my point stands. I don't think his brand is hurt. I think his brand maybe doesn't grow with that potential that everyone has at the World Cup. You know, that one breakout game that you have. Like, it happened to Chicharito. He had a good World Cup, and he got bought by Manchester United. I mean, I get what you're saying.
After the
but I don't
2014
think-
World Cup, Barcelona were linked with Fabian Johnson. Barcelona were linked with Fabian Johnson. This is what a World Cup can do. After the 2014 World Cup, DeAndre Yedlin sold and went to Tottenham.
But I mean, we can also talk about the dangers of over inflation of players after a World Cup.
I mean,
But-
yes, I think overinflation is perfectly fine, but it gives you that opportunity to be overinflated.
True. I don't see if he were like at like Berlin, Hertha Berlin. I think your point would be made. But he's playing for a top team that's won the German league recently, that has made the Champions League twice in the last 5 years, the final. I don't think there are like maybe a handful of teams that he could go to that are bigger. Like in Germany, only one team is bigger.
Right.
He could go to Barcelona. He could go to Madrid.
You don't think a top 5 team in England is bigger or at least not equal with Dortmund?
I think maybe equal, but I don't think...
If he were to move to Tottenham or Liverpool or Arsenal, are we talking equal greater?
I think that's a sideways move.
You think it's a
I think
lateral move,
I think it's a lateral move.
even though you're moving to the, let's
It's
arguably
the most
the
watched.
best
It's
and
the most watched. It's
league
the
in
most
the world.
watched.
Most
It's the
competitive.
richest. It's the most competitive. It's not the best. I think the German team, the German league, and the Spanish league are better leagues with better talent. But England is the most watched. It's the most competitive because in England we don't like there are 5 teams that are competing. In Spain and Germany there are 1 or 2 teams that are competing. So it's not the most. They're not the most competitive. But I think the rest of the league, like you take Bayern Munich out of the picture, the rest of the league is very competitive. It's very even and it's very talented. Same with Spain. You take Madrid and Barcelona out, and you have 18 teams that are very competitive, very talented. So,
I think I'm going to split hairs here with you, and we're going to go off on a tangent for a minute. But I think I would argue that England is more competitive, top to bottom,
yes,
than the Bundesliga.
I agree.
Than La Liga. So how are you saying that there's more talent in those leagues?
Because there is more talent. I think the players there are better.
To be more competitive, though,
No.
if you put, let's say, Newcastle's a bad one because they just got relegated, but let's say you take a middle team from the middle of the table from England and put them against middle tier Bundesliga or La
I think
Liga.
the Bundesliga team wins.
Do you think so?
I absolutely do. I think they're better teams. And that's what I'm saying. It could be more competitive. The quality's lower, but it's more competitive. I know a lot of people get their feathers ruffled over when people don't say the Premier is the best. I think that I watch the Premier League almost exclusively. I think it's a more fun league to watch.
See, I disagree with that as well. I think the Bundesliga is amazing to watch. I don't know if the talent's necessarily there, but I think every game is competitive aside from the Bayern games. I think it is a more interesting league to watch. But why don't we
go back to
our original topic?
So again, I don't think Pulisic. I don't think his brand is hurt. I think his brand plateaus for the summer, and he just picks it right back up next year.
I think a plateau is a negative, though.
Okay.
I think if it's not growing, I'm just looking at this from its totality. I'm looking at the marketing. I'm looking at the advertising. What it would do if Alexi Lawless got on Fox Sports in the middle of the World Cup and said, "This is a top 10 player in the world. He's American. Watch him." And the casual's going to turn in and say, "Wait a minute." Because listen, United States, Americans, people who live in the U.S. are
Fickle.
fair weather.
Fickle.
Is that fair?
I think fickle's a better word.
Fickle, and they want winners.
Yes.
Basketball, we dominate in the Olympics because we're the only, aside from a couple other nations, we're the only nation that plays basketball, to the extent that we do. Football, there is no other football league in the world.
There isn't.
So we are the world champions when we win the Super Bowl.
I guess that's true.
Baseball, the exact same. But the U.S., we're competing on a competitive market, and we're never that top team.
Right.
And so fans don't want to turn in to losers. It's true.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true. So if Alexi Lawless gets to get on Fox Sports and say, this is going to be or is going to be a top player or already is a top player in the world, you need to watch him. It'll give something for someone to look at.
Okay.
Really?
So the people that wouldn't tune in anyway.
Yes.
They would only tune in to watch him.
I believe so. I think that would be a large crowd. I'm not saying that's not a niche. That is, I think, plenty of people tune in to watch that.
Okay, point taken.
The NBA is as big as it is today is because of the faces of the NBA. LeBron James, Stephon Curry. Those players, because you put a face on the league. They have the argument every day on ESPN. Who's on the Mount Rushmore? Who's on the Mount Rushmore of soccer? Nobody from America. Could there be? Maybe. And if there was, would you tune in?
I wouldn't care.
I would. And so would a new person who's being first introduced to the sport.
I think it's difficult for us because I would tune in no matter what. I would tune in I would cry extensively for at least a couple of days. Well, I was thinking about 4 years ago, what would happen if we didn't, and my first reaction was, I'd still watch. Like, if Mexico hadn't qualified 4 years ago, I'd still watch the World Cup. Definitely.
Yes, I think you would.
But that's us.
It seems to me that you lose a generation of people, though, when you miss out on a World Cup.
In that, is that going to be? Is that more of a long term? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
What about Colombia? They missed out for like 2 decades, and they came back, and now they're ranked like in the top 5. How do you justify that? Because there were nobodies.
Mhm.
Okay, the last World Cup they made was the U.S. World Cup. Was it '94? World Cup '94, I think it was, or '92.
Well, let's actually put this in a different context. You use Colombia, and I'm not familiar with them, but let's talk about Germany.
Okay,
For a long time, Germany was not the superpower it is now.
right.
They decided one day that they were going to change their system. They were going to grow through youth. They were going to really push forward the idea of soccer, of development. That led them to the World Cup. It led them to winning how many trophies in the past couple of years?
Right.
As a nation, they decided that. The U.S. is never going to decide that. Donald Trump is never going to get on and say, we're going to commit to soccer.
Right.
Because we're sad.
That's what they did in Germany.
I mean, the federation from top down, they said, there's a great book on it. It's called Das Boot. Read it and learn about it. If you miss out, you miss out on developing talent, on these pressure games. And I think that is huge. The U.S. under 17s, under 20s has missed out on World Cup qualifiers. Olympics multiple times now.
Yes.
And I think it has stunted the growth.
Yes.
And I think they've missed out on those players now. Because those players get seen at the Olympics, and they get scouted, and they move on, and they develop. I think missing this skips a generation, and it is extremely detrimental to now the long-term goals of the U.S.
But for a long time, there were no American players playing in Europe. And all of a sudden, over the last maybe 6 years, they just cropped up. Because when they did play, they played in like Norway or somewhere. But now you're seeing a lot.
Alexi Lawless played in Serie A when it was the biggest league in the world.
Yeah, he played for 1 season. And he played like 2 games.
Biggest league in the world.
Played for like 2 games.
They were the Premier League of that generation.
I mean, you're right. There were exceptions. But there were a lot of players that were playing in like at Malmo or whatever in Sweden, or not Sweden, Norway. The Norwegian league was a big place where a lot of U.S. players played, and all of a sudden, these people.
33 appearances with Padova from 1994 to 1995.
Who's Padova?
Padova.
Never heard of him. Didn't he play for Torino for a year?
He might have.
That's where I remember him playing for Torino. Whatever.
Let's bring it back.
My point is, there weren't any, and now there became this new thing where a lot of U.S. players started playing, especially in Germany. That came out of nowhere. Those players that have started in the German league, they didn't get scouted in the Olympics because, as you said, they weren't making it. So they were there despite the fact that the U.S. didn't make those tournaments. So I don't think those tournaments are necessary for players to develop. They help.
I think you're missing a main point, though. How many consecutive World Cups has the USA been to since 1998, I believe? Or
No, it's since you guys hosted it.
2002?
No, you didn't host in 2002. It was hosted here in, 92 or 94? I don't remember the exact date. It was definitely 94.
And you think none of those consecutive World Cups?
Yeah, but the players that are playing in Germany now, they're on the team because they played in Germany. They're not in Germany because they played for the U.S. team. Do you see?
But they put the U.S. players on a map, though, for them to be looked at. You make 2 consecutive quarterfinals of a World Cup, and they start thinking, maybe these players are good enough to play here. And then you send scouts. Then you do these big teams. Dortmund comes to a random tournament in the middle of Hershey, Pennsylvania, or wherever he's from, and they do this. So, I mean, I think these things are comparable. I think one leads to the next. I think if you miss out on a World Cup, you miss out on other talent that we do have. Okay, so you say Christian Pulisic will not go down. Fine. Kellen Acosta, center midfielder, FC Dallas, 22 years old. If he goes in and he lights up, I think he has the talent to play abroad. I think he has the talent to be a 10-year veteran of the U.S. team. If he goes to the World Cup and he lights it up, he moves to a new team like Yedlin did, then his now development grows. He will grow. That shows them what we have as players. See, you don't even know how to respond because I took away the exception, which is Pulisic, and I'm going to say Kellen Acosta.
I mean, of course, but you don't need it.
You don't need it, but every eye is on the World Cup for 3 months of the year. Not every eye is watching an FC Dallas game on Wednesday against Montreal.
True. No, you're right. I think you're putting too much emphasis on what this could bring because I mean, for example, look at David Luiz in the last World Cup, specifically that game against Germany, where in theory his stock should have plummeted to the point where he should have been playing.
That's unfair. You picked an outlier of a game. That's unfair.
He's not that good of a defender.
Then you could say the whole Brazilian team should never play ever again after that game.
I'm just saying he was not a good defender before. His stock is high because he's Brazilian, and he showed many times when he played for Chelsea, many times where he was out of position, and then he got sold to PSG, and then he came back. But I'm saying your stock, you could have a horrible game and your stock doesn't get hurt in the World Cup. But you're telling me that
you could have one great game, though. One. I'm not saying 3 or 4. I'm saying one great game in the World Cup and you get sold. You move. Absolutely. Deservedly? I don't know. But that happens 100%.
What happens if the player isn't good enough and then they sit on the bench?
At least they had the option.
Yeah, but then they don't
develop. If they go at the World Cup, they don't have the option to do that.
They don't develop. And even if Acosta had a phenomenal tournament and he gets... What do you think if he had a really good tournament? Where does he go? Like, just give me kind of like where you think he would end up.
I think he is a low Bundesliga team quality. I'd say a championship team maybe in in England. I think he could play for the likes of these Belgian teams that take on these young kids, Vitesse, PSV. I think Anderlecht, things like this. Those lower leagues or the middle to bottom of the higher leagues. I think he has the potential to play there. And I think if he was in a World Cup where all eyes are on him and he has a decent to okay tournament, why not move?
So you're saying right now you would rather him play in Belgium than in the MLS?
Yes. And I'm not saying that the MLS is not a good league and it doesn't develop talent. I think at some point you need to make the move to a better league. Let's talk about a Mexican player who maybe plays for PSV.
Right.
Who left his domestic league to go play in, let's say, Belgium.
Netherlands.
The Netherlands. It's around there.
Same more or less. Yeah.
Was that a positive move for his career?
Yeah, but I also think the Dutch league is a better league than the Belgian league. But okay, fine. That's nitpicking. You're right. He did move. It was time for him to move. We're talking about Irving Lozano, by the way. He played for Monterrey for a long time.
And is Monterrey a bad team?
No, they are not a bad team.
Are they in a bad league?
They're in a mediocre league.
But a good league.
Decent league.
On the best team in that league.
One of the.
And he made a move.
He did. To PSV.
And are they the top team in their league?
I think right now that they're either in first or second.
Are they always the top team in their league?
They're one of the 3 best teams.
And is this move good for his career?
In
hindsight, because it's worked out, even if it hasn't worked out and he's not the leading goal scorer in his league, was it a good move to him to make at that age and at that time?
Of course, you said not looking back, not hindsight, because a lot of Mexican players have made the move and everyone's super excited. and then they sit. And then, no, I don't think it's a good move. Because I think a lot of players move to leagues or to teams that are above their...
And this is why I didn't say go to a top 5 team in the Premier League or even a middle table team. I said a championship league. I said Belgium. I said Netherlands. I think they have to test themselves at some point. They're too comfortable where they are.
Okay, I agree with that.
And I think the World Cup is huge in that regard in identifying talent that, I mean, let's be honest, are most of the scouts for these big league teams going to the United States, or are they going to France?
Probably France.
Or Brazil, or Argentina.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I'm sure, Dortmund found Christian Pulisic, so,
Obviously.
these scouts are coming here, but it is just a huge miss if these players who are on these MLS teams who are ready to make the move to the next step, whether that be a lateral move to a middling table team in Belgium. I don't know if you think the MLS is on par with a league like that yet. But, the moment you get to a team like that, the moment you get recognized, it creates a whole nother world for you that you can now jump into. If you tear up MLS, you're never going to move straight from the MLS to Chelsea and start the next week.
Right.
But if you tear up at PSV in the Netherlands or at Anderlecht or at one of these big teams in these leagues that are considered feeder leagues, sure, you can absolutely move to Chelsea and start the next week.
True.
You don't get there unless you're noticed. You're noticed when everybody's eyes are on you.
So the odds of being noticed are greater.
Absolutely. And it's a huge miss if they're not there.
So how far down the road, in this hypothetical scenario where the U.S. doesn't qualify, how far down the road does this hurt? Is it just one World Cup cycle? Or do you think not making this World Cup decreases your chance of making the next one? And if so, to what extent?
I think, with CONCACAF,
True. This is true.
We can look at Mexico 1 year ago, who got in on the playoff last-minute goal by a different team, not even their own team, and made it in, and now they're top of the group. So, no, I don't think that. I think it impacts the development of both the players and the culture of U.S. soccer.
Okay.
I think that is what is impacted. The next World Cup, listen, the U.S. can crawl into this with the 4th place spot, win the playoff in penalties over New Zealand, and then go to the World Cup 8 months down the line and make the quarterfinals. Those two things don't go together.
Right.
So I don't think that's what it is. I think it is the development of the players and of the culture, of the passion for this team. I think that is what's missed, and I think that's the more important piece. Not being in the World Cup is pretty important too, but those are the long-term, more important pieces.
No. I think that people that are going to tune into the World Cup are going to tune into the World Cup. But I think you're right. I think people that wouldn't normally tune in won't tune in if the U.S. is missing. But
I think it's more nuanced than that. I think if they're missing, you miss out on so many eyes. Because at this point in the league, lower league teams, the Tampa Bay Rowdies, almost fill out their entire stadium in a Division II league with teams who are not even very good. When did that happen? It's growing. The sport is growing. All it needs is a World Cup to light a fire up under its ass. You could bleep me out later.
I think we can keep that in. But you don't think, that's what I'm saying, you don't think the league is healthy enough to survive?
I think it will survive. I'm talking about jumping to that next point, to where we are a soccer country.
You think...
And I'm not saying this World Cup would necessarily do that. I'm being nuanced in my argument. I'm saying that it will get that ball rolling. I think if the World Cup was here, then maybe yes. I think that we will jump into that next echelon of this is a country who's who doesn't make fun of soccer, who ESPN doesn't talk about it and act like they don't know the sport, even though they know it because it's funny to do.
You think so? You think the culture would change if you host the World Cup, or say you make it to a semifinal in a World Cup?
Yes. We love winners in this country. You know, the U.S. women's soccer team has lots of support.
True. But that's not going to... Okay, it's not going to change the fact that people love their NFL and their NBA.
It's not.
So it's not going to change... You'd have to take fans away from those sports and bring them into soccer, and that's not going to happen.
Oh, I think they can be synonymous. We have a lot of people, we have a lot of cities that don't have NFL teams in this country who would love to have an MLS team, to love to have a NASL team, a USL team. I think if the U.S. hosted, if the U.S. won a World Cup, yes, I think absolutely things would change.
The problem is, and I know this is an argument everyone has made since the beginning of time, soccer doesn't compete with any other sport in any other country. Soccer is competing with multiple sports in this country.
I think I see where you're going with this. I'll let you continue.
No, I just think in other countries, the effect of winning a World Cup, maybe you could argue that it wouldn't even be felt in other countries because soccer's already a thing, but here, even if you win the World Cup, are you going to dethrone the NFL? I don't think...
I think change can happen. I mean, the NBA is starting to dethrone the NFL. I think 100% it is. I think down the line with, and this is another conversation for another day, with concussions, with the rule changes that constantly happen in the NFL, I think the NBA is just a more enjoyable league to watch. There's a reason why soccer is watched around the whole planet. It's enjoyable. It's fun. Anybody can do it. I mean, anybody can go out and kick a ball and not have a concussion.
Right.
I mean, there's a reason why. I think over time, it's like saying 50 years ago, baseball was the best sport in the world, in the U.S., and no other sport would pass it. Is baseball still America's pastime?
Arguable.
I would say no.
Right.
I mean, so that's like saying the NFL will never be passed by another league. The NBA will never be passed by another league. I mean, things change.
Okay. But, baseball's still drawing large. I guess that's not even the argument. I just think... I think it's part of an ingrained culture.
And that's what I'm getting at, though, is... I'm not worried about missing this World Cup because we won't make the next one. I want to make this the culture. I want to develop this country, its players, and its people to ingrain themselves with this. And I think that's what you miss when you miss a World Cup, especially in a country of people who winning is everything. If they don't make the World Cup, it's once again, we're not good at soccer. It's a sissy sport. Those things just go together. I mean,
And I don't know this, and I would love maybe research this later, but the spike in viewership of soccer during a World Cup year and after, that doesn't remain. That goes back down. It peaks during World Cup, and it goes back down. Now, I want to know, what I would like to know is how much does it decrease the year after? In this country specifically, you have to think that...
I think the better question is how many people, for the first time watching the World Cup, tune into a domestic league and then stay with that domestic league. And I bet you it's a good percentage.
You think so?
I think so.
I think the World Cup is like...
An enigma?
I think it's an event that people tune in to watch because it's an event. Because people, like, for example, take the Olympics. People tune into the Olympics and they watch stuff that they would never watch normally. Like, people watch archery and horseback riding, and they're like, whoa, that's so cool. And then they don't, start watching YouTube videos on horseback riding and archery. Like, it goes away after the Olympics is done, right? It's like, it's an event. It's like, look at this. That was really cool. And then they move on with their lives. And then 4 years later, they're like, I think one time I watched... a British lady on a horse jump a piece of wood. So then they tune back into that. I don't think it makes, and granted, there aren't any horseback riding leagues.
Well, this is what my only counterpoint, because I think it's a great point, honestly, but my only counterpoint would be is that There might be horseback riding leagues, and I'm sure somebody's going to yell at us and throw a comment at us and say that. But the domestic league is at the level it is now and can draw fans specifically from the World Cup.
I think it can and it does, but I think the league has grown separate from World Cup performances. I think the league is growing on its own because it's getting better, like you said. I think it's established. There are brands that people recognize. People want to go to the stadiums. The atmosphere is fun, and it's on TV. And I think that is a thing that's happening, and then the World Cup is a separate thing. And do I think the two things can commingle and one can help the other one? I think the World Cup can help the MLS, and I think the MLS can help World Cup viewership, but I don't think the MLS is dependent in any way on the World Cup. I think the MLS will continue to grow naturally, whether or not the World Cup, the U.S. is in the World Cup, or the U.S. hosts a World Cup. I think it definitely will spike during those years. Every 4 years, I think viewership and fan base spikes. But I don't think everyone that tunes into the World Cup loves what they see. Pulisic makes it to the semis, then they're just going to remain soccer fans. I think they tune into the World Cup because it's the World Cup and that's the thing to do. And in fact, I know lots of people like, I don't watch soccer. I just watch the World Cup. The end.
I think you're missing the point though, and I'm gonna equate this to FIFA. How many people play FIFA but have never played soccer in their life?
Probably
How many
quite a
people
lot.
become fans of soccer though because of FIFA?
I would say that's also a few.
And are these not synonymous? Is that playing FIFA? Listen, any view of the sport, any way of watching the sport turns people on. If it was behind closed doors and no one watched it, and it wasn't in front of you on the TV, it would be impossible to grow. Let's be honest.
Right.
Anything grows the sport. Anything lights a fire under it. FIFA. I know plenty of friends who now want to talk FIFA or talk soccer or come out and play pickup games solely because they just played FIFA. They know who Bayern Munich is in Barcelona because of FIFA. If you watch the World Cup, guess who you now know? Maybe you already knew Christian Pulisic, but you know him. But you know who you definitely know now? Kellen Acosta, the guy who plays at FC Dallas, who maybe got a lot of coverage because he's 22 years old and he's out there starting in a World Cup and he had one good game and now you know him. Maybe you're from Houston or you're from Texas and that's somebody you latch on to.
Yeah.
When you weren't tuning in to MLS, maybe because you were watching NFL at the same time and they were on at the same time and you said, I'll choose NFL. But when it's just the World Cup and everybody's eyes are on it, you tune into that one player who you had no idea about, now you like him and now you follow him. Same thing in FIFA. So many friends I know play FIFA who have no idea about anything, but now they know, you know. So, I mean, I think that's the best way I could put it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn the conversation now on you. What does it mean for the U.S. if they miss out on the World Cup?
Well, like I've been saying, and it's funny that we're arguing, like you as a U.S. fan thinks it's so bad, and I think it's not as bad as.
Well, I'm emotional.
Right. Yeah, maybe that's true. So this is what I think. I think, yeah, it hurts. It hurts the immediate future. I think it hurts the U.S. brand a little bit, but I think the players that are playing right now in Germany, say for example, which is the one that has the most U.S. internationals playing, those guys made it to Germany on their own. They didn't make it because the team was good. They made it because they were good enough to get the attention of the scouts for those teams. So, I mean, I don't know this, but how many players after last World Cup got contracts in Europe? Like, everyone talks about that performance against Belgium, where, you know, Tim Howard broke the record for saves. After that performance, where they're like, hey, let's get some U.S. guys. I mean, that didn't happen.
I think we just discussed this. DeAndre Yedlin moved. Barcelona was linked with Fabian
but people are linked with everyone all the time.
U.S. players are not. I'm sorry, but U.S. players, domestic MLS players, are not linked all the time. It's just, that's not true.
All right.
I mean,
okay. but my point. Okay, fine, not U.S. players, but
Has Chris Wondolowski ever been linked with FC Schalke? No. And maybe I'm wrong, and somebody will send me a link and show me some kind of.
all right.
But I mean, it's just. I think if you play in Europe, yes, you're always linked. If you play in the third, the championship or League Two or something, yes, you're always linked because you're in a well-known league that constantly has it. But from the U.S. standpoint, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, but those players got taken anyway. Like they don't need. So this is the thing. I think the negative impact is going to be less than what you think. I think these players are going to continue to be going to Europe to these other teams because they've already been doing so, and there's a reason why. What's his face?
John Brooks.
John Brooks just broke the record for a U.S. player. Didn't he?
Yes, but that's the exception though. John Brooks is half German.
Is he?
He grew up in Germany.
I didn't know that. But didn't a lot of these what's that guy I hate?
I think you're gonna say Jermaine Jones.
Yes, Jermaine Jones.
Very similar. He speaks German. I mean, yes, you're talking about these Klinsmann guys that were half German, half U.S., and I mean that's how we found them.
But didn't he? Okay, for all the faults that he had, isn't this kind of his influence that all these guys are going to Germany and being recognized in Germany because of him? So
it's actually more of a nuanced argument than that. The old Rowdies coach, and his name is actually the one who came up with the list. He went across to every nation and specifically looked for dual nationalists and approached them and said, the U.S. wants you. And Thomas Rongen, literally, this was his job in the U.S. Federation, was to go from country to country, find dual nationalists, and say, soccer players, of course.
Right,
I'm not
right.
just some random bloke off the side of the road. And he created a list, got in touch with these kids, followed up with them, and he is actually the one who did this. Jurgen gets all the credit because he's the German.
Okay.
And did he extend relation because he's German? Absolutely, I'm sure he did. But the original list, the original thought was Thomas Rongen, and he's the one who did it. That's a fun fact. Google it.
That is fun because I was in the camp that thought that it was Jurgen.
Didn't we all?
I guess so. Well, that's that, I guess. I have nothing
to shoot your
nothing else to say about that.
Down. It's a difficult and it's a very nuanced argument, but I think it is. I mean, it's the players who are born here, the domestic players who grew up in these MLS academies and these academies, who are the ones that are getting overlooked. And I think a World Cup gives them that opportunity.
Okay, and just as you were talking just now, I think I switched my mind, and I think I agree with you. And the reason is because I'm thinking, like, when I'm making this argument, I'm making the argument, like, what if Mexico didn't make it? And I don't think it would hurt that much. But then I'm thinking, well, also in Mexico, soccer doesn't compete with other sports.
No, and it doesn't.
So,
it's that culture. I mean, if you guys have one generation that's lost, I mean, you literally will do the same thing Germany did. You will turn around and say, we need to fix this. This is how we're going to do it. I mean, the U.S. is a slow and steady game. Now, you said kids going to the German league, the Bundesliga.
yeah.
I actually have a different theory about that, and I think it's very recent. I think it's a recency bias, but Fox Sports 2 or 3 years ago took over the coverage for the Bundesliga.
Right.
5 years ago, 10 years ago, were you able to watch the Bundesliga?
You'd have to get those special channels.
You have to get the special channels. But now you can turn on Saturday morning after I watch my Chelsea game, boom, I turn on the Dortmund game. Boom, I turn on the Schalke game.
So you think the availability of the league for U.S. viewers has gotten more attention to those players?
I think it is cyclical. I think both the players are now willing to move to that league because they know it. And I think it is the other way around. I think because the league is now being shown here, the league has, and people make this argument, I think it's true in some sort. If you bring in an American player to your team, your viewership goes up. And it's true. I specifically will turn on a Schalke game. I've never seen a Schalke game in my life until this season. But if I see Weston McKennie is starting, me and the other 10,000 people on the MLS Reddit will all go ahead and watch it. And it's true.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I know you're right because I do the same thing. Like, I don't care about the Dutch league, but if I see PSV's playing on ESPN Deportes, I will turn it on and watch.
These leagues are absolutely trying to grow in the United States. Yeah. They see the fan bases here now. They are absolutely trying to monopolize
and look how many Chicharito jerseys Bayern Leverkusen. I own one.
I know.
Do I care about them?
People have Dortmund jerseys.
I mean, I don't care that much about Leverkusen, but I sure as heck.
I have a Wolfsburg jersey, John Brooks. I mean, it is what it is.
You're
it's
right.
True.
You're right, and I think that's a lot. Another reason why maybe over the last 5 years Tottenham's kind of grown because Dempsey played there, Yedlin had a thing, and then oh my God, Brad Friedel. I almost forgot my boy Frad
Fried
from
his Frad.
Yeah. To his friends. Fred. No, yeah, you're right. Tottenham has this history of playing U.S. players, and so I think that kind of like, hey, this team has U.S.
Fulham, things like that. I mean, Schalke has 3 U.S. players. One who's been loaned out, one in the academy, and now Wes McKennie on the first team.
Yeah.
People tune into them just for that. And, I mean, 5 years ago, I had never watched a Bundesliga game in my life. Now, we all know who Bayern Munich is. They play in the Champions League, blah, blah, blah. But now it's on TV. Now I follow it. Now my players are there. We have more players in the Bundesliga than any other league aside from our domestic league. I mean, and I will turn on. It's terrible, but if Bobby Wood and I can't even remember what team Bobby Wood plays for right now. If Bobby Wood is playing and his team is horrible, they are not good. He plays for Hamburg. If they are playing, I will turn in and watch the game, even though they're a horrible team, because I want to see what he does.
So if he's not playing, you don't watch?
I won't watch them.
If he's on the bench, you're like, I'm not going to watch?
No.
Okay.
You want to know how extreme it really is? When Weston McKennie gets subbed out in the 56th minute, I turn it off. I mean, it's true. It's horrible, but it's true. And, I mean, this is what it means for these players, though, and this is what it means for the culture of the United States. People still look at MLS as not the greatest league in the world. People don't want to follow it because we don't have the best players. But if we have players in what are considered the best leagues in the world, and they get there through recognition of the World Cup, it turns more people into watching the game. And it grows, it develops the league, it develops the culture, and it develops the players. I mean, put a bow tie around it.
All right. In which case, does the U.S. qualify?
They do.
3rd or 4th place?
Through heartbreak on my part. I think they go out and they win. They beat Panama. I think and we can talk about the roster, and I think that's another podcast and my other theories about that. I think they go out and win against Panama. This is a Panama team they should beat. I mean, they've tied them, I think, the last 3 times. But with the pressure on the line, at home, in Orlando City, very close, confined stadium, loud, they win. And then I think they go to Trinidad and Tobago, and I mean, it's a hard place to play. They're not on the best form, but I mean, 4 points I think gets them in.
I think gets them 4 points. 4 points gets you in. Easy.
I think 4 points gets them in. I mean, what do we think? How many points do we think Honduras and Panama are?
So really quickly,
Panama's at 10 points right now.
Right.
1 point above both the United States and Honduras.
So Costa Rica will play Honduras on Friday.
Costa Rica will play Honduras on Friday. Where?
That's a good question. I don't know. Does it matter? I don't think Honduras beats Costa Rica.
I mean, I think Costa Rica is actually going to finish top of the group, if you ask me. I think they're actually going to pass Mexico for top of the group. But no, I think, right, okay, so let's plan it out. Let's say Costa Rica beats Honduras. Honduras stays at 9 points. The U.S. wins against Panama. 3 points. 12. We're at 12 and 9. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it is. Panama will be at 10. U.S. will be in 3rd place with 12.
That's it. That's all you needed. If you beat Panama, you're in 3rd place. If you draw or lose to Panama, I think you're still in because you're not going to lose to Trinidad.
Well, you just made me feel a lot better. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. I think
That's conditioned upon if we tie Panama though, and Honduras wins.
then it gets tricky.
Then it gets really,
But you have to
really
remember-
tricky, and you have to start doing some arithmetic there because.
But you have to remember Honduras has to beat both Costa Rica and Mexico.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
And I think that's why we get in because I think we have the most favorable schedule.
Right. I think that's what I was in my head when I was thinking about this when we decided we're going to do this. The number one reason, like, I'm not even worried about you guys because the last fixture, the very last game on Tuesday, it's just so favorable for the U.S.
Listen, Mexico in 2014 or I guess 2013 qualifiers qualified with 11 points, 2 more than the U.S. has now. Only 2 wins out of 10.
Yeah, it was horrible. I remember.
5 draws. So even if, let's say, we draw both games, still have an opportunity to get in.
Yeah, if you draw both games, I think 2 points is still a chance. 2 points is still a chance. 3 points is I think 3 points and you're in. But even if you have to go to the playoff, I think right now it's either Iraq and Syria.
Yeah, I think it's Syria and yes, Iraq.
Yeah.
I said New Zealand earlier.
Yeah, New Zealand. Yeah, I know you did because that was who we played. But I think either Iraq or Syria. I don't think. I mean, the political ramifications
Would
could be kind of tricky.
Absolutely massive.
But as far as footballing, I don't think you're going to have a problem. If you finish fourth,
I mean, anything can happen in a playoff.
Yeah,
I don't want to go to a playoff. I absolutely
Nobody wants to go to a
not
playoff.
want to go to a playoff.
Argentina's looking like they're going to go to a playoff.
I don't understand what's happening.
Yeah, but that's a different story.
Yes.
But anyway, I think even if not Friday, I think by Tuesday you'll be breathing easier.
I think Friday I am going to either be extremely intoxicated, emotional, and I might have a panic attack.
I mean, I think Panama's the trickier of the two, but I think even with a mixed result against Panama, you guys will be fine.
I think that's that.
I guess so. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
So signing off.
Signing off, it's been Caleb.
And Anthony.
And we are
The Rivals.